Hey everyone, I'm Jack Watson, UI UX designer, illustrator, animator, and donut connoisseur, and I'll be your host for today's Illustrator Typography Challenge. Today we are getting fancy. We will be working on creating a monogram, starting with the type tool and adding flourishes and embellishments to personalize it. You can find links in the description below this video to other challenges, our Creative Cloud communities on Discord, and we've also got a link to download your free resources to create along with us, which includes the file that I'll be working in today. So let's head over to our starter file in Illustrator, although briefly. I've got some notes off to the side here, and I've got some really fun resources today. I'm going to pull them up for you. This first one here, I would highly recommend this site I found. It's really cool. I love typography. It's got this whole history on the drop cap and illustrated letters. I would take a browse through this and get some inspiration. Really cool stuff in here. Ooh, that just zoomed. But we're going to start off today in Adobe Fonts. We're going to get a head start with a font we can modify. You can feel free to draw your own characters, draw your own letters if you prefer. We're just going to start with a font for today. So I'm going to hop over actually to all fonts because we're going to browse using the tags. And to get started here, oh, I already have my sample text in here, but normally it would say something like, I think it says this one, Roger. It would say this text kind of at the top, and I like to put in my sample type because it lets you see what your text is going to look like with all the fonts in Adobe fonts. So in here, I'm going to work with my initials. I recommend if you're having trouble coming up with an idea that you start with your initials. You may decide that you want to incorporate this monogram into a part of your personal brand at some point. So we're going to type in JW for me. And then we've got some tags, and we've got some different ways to sort here. Tags, you can kind of think of those as being different types of styles. Classifications are like, what type of font is it? Is it a sans serif? Is it a serif font? Serifs are little accents that are on top of the letters. You can kind of get a preview here with these. And then properties down here. Do you want a heavier font? Do you want a lighter font? Do you want something that's wider or more narrow? I'm going to pick something that I personally want to, the style that I personally want. You can feel free to choose the style that matches your personal brand or whatever you want to create. I'm just going to go with Art Deco for today. Now, once we're in here, you can see our little previews. Another thing that I like to do, just a personal preference, I like to sort by newest instead of by featured. I like to see what's new. And then from there, I just kind of browse until I find something that catches my eye. Like I said, for today, I want something that's going to feel fancy, so I probably want to go with something that's got serifs, and I also want something that's got some space. So you can see this one's a good one, Broad Acre here. It's got some space between the characters. That's going to let me work with that negative space in between if I want to add some some texture to the interior of the letters. So I'm going to scroll through. This one could work. I like the name Quiche as well. It's kind of fun. I'm going to go with this one, this Louvette banner. So I'm just going to click in here, click on the type, and then I'm going to activate it up at the top. And once I click on that little thing, it's going to tell me that I've activated these, and we can move on over to Illustrator. All right, so now we're in here. I am going to select the type tool. Looks like we got a question in our live chat. What was the site for inspiration? I was looking at a site called I Love Typography. It's just a blog post from there, but I've got the link over here in the video as well. If you are in the video, in our starter file as well. All right, I'm gonna click with the type tool here, and I'm gonna just type out my initials. When I click, it's gonna make point type. Which is what we want for today, and it makes it really small. So I'm going to switch to my selection tool, and I'm going to click on the corner here and drag, holding down shift to constrain it. If you don't hold down shift, what's going to happen is it's going to do some weird things. There's actually a really easy way to fix this. You can go to your character panel, either at the top here or up in Windows and character. If you ever accidentally skew your type, we can view options. You can go in here and you can just make sure that you set the percentage back to 100, and that's going to fix it. All right, so I'm going to type out my initials. I'm going to double click on my text to select it all with my type tool and then just type out JW. Then I'm going to go into my character panel and I'm going to start to type out that text that we chose from Adobe Fonts. I'll pick bold. Like I said, I want to have something that's got some space in there. Dragging out the corner, holding shift again, we're going to scale it up even more, make it nice and big since it's kind of the centerpiece of our design for today. And then, because we're going to be modifying this type, I actually want to go to type and create outlines today. That's going to make your letters actually into shapes. Normally I'd want to keep this editable text, but we're going to be modifying these letters, so I want to expand them. And then we can kind of like make some adjustments. We can kind of edit these points, essentially. So I'm going to Command Z to undo and get everything kind of set back in place. So like I said, we're going to be using some flourishes for today, and I am going to, if we take a look at our kind of reference site here, you can see lots of like swirling things happening. So I'm going to grab, which I already have grabbed, the spiral tool. If you don't see it in your toolbar, you'll probably see the line segment tool. You can click on the line segment tool and drop down to the spiral tool. If you've never used a spiral tool, it's a really, really easy way to create perfect spirals if you are creating something with the golden ratio, for example. But we have a couple of options in here for our spiral tool. The first one, if we're just dragging, the whole time we're going to be doing this, we're going to be holding down the mouse, and that's important. As we're doing this, we're going to be switching with keyboard shortcuts to change the way that our spiral looks. You want to hold down with the mouse the entire time we're doing this. So I'm dragging out with the mouse, and I can first decrease or increase the number of swirls on my spiral. It's a little bit hard to see here, so I'm actually going to start out with a different keyboard shortcut. I'm going to start out with Command or Control. And when you do that, you can see that it either makes the loops tighter or looser, like so we get more or less space between each of them. So you can kind of adjust your shape like that. The other thing that we can do is we can increase or decrease the number of kind of spirals going around in our shape just using the up and down arrows on the keyboard. So I'm just going to do that, getting a shape that I kind of like here. I'm going to make this something like this. And then once I kind of get it set up using those keyboard shortcuts, I can just release and it's going to keep the number of loops and the position of my loops. And then I can switch to holding down Shift, and that's going to constrain it as I scale. So it's going to keep it so that I can have a straight across bottom edge here, just like that. So now we've got our spiral. I can go over using my selection tool. I'm just going to apply the default fill and stroke over here in the bottom left next to my fill and stroke options. And then I can just kind of drag this and get it lined up with the, trying to zoom in, line it up at the bottom of my letter J here, because I want to replace the bottom of my letter with this kind of spiral shape. So I'm just kind of lining it up. I've got Smart Guides on under View Smart Guides. That's going to make this task a lot easier, so I can kind of drag it, and then once it's aligned to the bottom there, you're going to see that it's going to snap into place. And I actually don't want my spiral to overlap my letter here, so I'm going to go up and I'm just going to drag out again, and I'm going to use that command and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and then draw out another spiral. You can delete that one, line this one up into position. I had a white fill on mine originally when I clicked that default fill and stroke. I actually find that to be easier for what we're doing here, so I'm just going to go back up to my color panel here and click on white. Kind of lets me see things without having those shapes come through each other. Makes it easier for me to kind of tell what I'm doing. So then I'm just going to drag, holding down Shift to make it a little bit larger. And now we've got our shape kind of in position. I'm going to, at this point, increase the stroke weight a little bit using the up and down arrows, just clicking in my stroke up in the control bar. I'm going to bring it up a little bit until it kind of matches the weight of my serifs, or in this case, the, oh gosh, I'm blanking on what the middle of the shape on this J is. Speaking of, I also have in your link the type terms. You can learn about the type terms, which I've completely forgotten the name of the shape there. It's not a descender. Oh well, you guys will have to let me know in the Discord because I've completely forgotten the name of the J. Anyways, we're gonna line it up at the bottom and make sure that we've got it pretty close to the weight here. If you're working with a shape that's got like a really heavy serif or it's a lot wider, I'll just demonstrate kind of what you can do in this case. You hit Command C to copy, Command V to paste. And let's say you need to increase this way up because you've got like a really wide letter, really heavy letter. You start to kind of lose the spiral in the center. So one way to kind of fix that is we can go to our stroke width profiles at the top. And I'm going to switch to a tapered one down here. And when we do that, you can see you can get that heavy line closer to the letter. And as it spirals around, it gets thinner and thinner. So that's one way to kind of change. Or maybe you just want to have like a tapered line instead. It's also an option. Alright, so we've got our first kind of flourish going on here. Now let's say I want to, I'll add a second one. So I'm going to click here on my spiral tool and repeat the whole process again, dragging a shape out. I want this one to be a little bit larger, but still in line with my original, so I need to make it a little bit smaller so that kind of fits. So again, using Command, I'm going to drag down. Switching to Shift, it'll make it straight, and then I can just kind of move it into place. Like I said, smart guides will be your friend here to get everything aligned. And then I'll scale it up a little bit so that it kind of reaches the end. Alright, so now we've got two spirals. Everything looks nicely aligned, right? And we are looking good. I'm going to add a little end onto these circles since I don't like the way that they look by switching to the ellipse tool. And holding down Shift and dragging, I'm just going to draw an ellipse, switching the fill and stroke, so I've got a black fill. Zooming a little bit, I'm going to switch back to my selection tool and just kind of put it in place. Same down here, we can just drag this out. There we go. Alright, so now we've got two fancy flourishes going on. I'm going to minimize this for a second since we're not actually working with the type tool. Now we've got kind of roundness going on. So to kind of keep going with that idea, I'm going to go up here and I'm actually going to round out these serifs along the top because I think that will fit with our style. So I'm going to switch to the direct selection tool. With the direct selection tool, I'm going to tap and I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to select all of these serif points underneath my shape here. And then I'm going to round them all out, including the W because we want to keep everything in the same kind of style. There we go. So now we've got a little bit of roundness. I'm going to go in here, and I'm happy with the way this looks, so I don't actually need the bottom edge of this J anymore. So I'm going to switch to the scissors tool, and I'm going to tap on these anchor points with the scissor tool, and it's going to cut that edge of my letter off of my J. And when I do that, I can just delete, and it'll remove that shape. Now I need to do one more thing here. I need to click my direct selection tool. I need to close that shape back up. Selecting the base shape, I'm going to hit Command J to just kind of close it up. Okay, speaking of our W, we also need to make our W kind of match with the other letter. So I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to drag and select my existing spirals. I'm going to hit Command, I'm actually going to hit Command G no, I'm not going to group them yet. I'm going to hit Command C to copy, Command F to paste in front, and I'm going to drag them over. And, oh, it looks like I forgot to add a white fill to this one, so I'm going to select this one and add a white fill to it. If that happens, you can go to Object, Arrange, Send Backward, and it's going to set your shape behind that one. That one just happened to be in front. So we're going to drag to select both of our spirals, and then I'm just going to hold down Shift and rotate it around to kind of flip it upside down. So we're balancing out the left side by adding something on the right side and keeping it everything in style. And here we can kind of play with the placement, right? We can add it up here to the kind of top edge of this serif, but it ends up making the side of the letter a little bit big. So I might instead zoom in here and try it on this top edge, lining it up with the top edge of that serif. And that could work kind of like replacing the other side of our W here. We need to do something do something different for our W though. So I want to get rid of this serif, but if I copy and paste just my W, just Command C and Command F, it gets a little bit complicated because we've got a compound shape here with deleting out that. So if I wanted to like delete out this shape, it starts to get more difficult because of the compound shape. So to avoid all of that, see, we can do something a little bit different. We can select with the direct selection tool are two spirals. So select the first one, holding down Shift, select the second one. I'm going to hit Command C and Command F to copy and paste in front. Then I'm going to hold down Shift and select my W. Then I'm going to go to my Pathfinder, wherever I put it. If it's not visible, I can just go up to Window and Pathfinder to open it up. And then I'm going to hit minus front. And that's going to punch those shapes out from my W here so that I can then, with my direct selection tool, just click on that remaining piece I don't want and hit delete. There we go. I do want to give a shout out and say hello to everybody in the live chat. Happy Tuesday. Yes, happy Tuesday. If you are on Behance or the Adobe Live YouTube channel, you can hang out and chat with us live every day at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Before we move on, I'm going to clean up a little bit here with the shapes. I don't need these white fills anymore, so I'm just going to click on the shapes, holding down Shift to select them all, and set them to be none. So now they've got no fills on them. I'm going to drag to select all of my spiral, hit Command G to group, do the same thing over here, drag to select, Command G. And then I kind of like I want to just, personally, I want to just kind of drag this down. I like the idea of having these two elements kind of line up, the two spirals on these letters. So we've already got some fancy letters going on. We can kind of drag and move them up. But now let's add some depth to these letters. Let's add something to that interior space like I was talking about. So I am going to, with the just the regular selection tool, I'm going to select the W, and then holding down Shift, I'm going to select the W again, or the J. So I've got both of my regular letter shapes selected. I'm going to go to Object, and I'm going to use one of my favorite tools, the Offset Path. The Offset Path will offset your letter either in a positive or negative value. So if we're at 0, it's the same as our original. Increasing up, it's going to make a new shape that is 1 pixel larger, 2 pixels, etc., all the way up. So it's going to make those new shapes equal distance from the original. So it's a really easy way to add some additional shapes to your letter. So if we go in the negative values, we've added an inset to our letters. I'm going to go -19 and hit OK. And then I'm going to change that to white. So now I'm going to open up my layers panel here, and this happened to me before, and I don't really remember why. So I'm just going to fix this by going to Command X to cut and Command F to paste. And then I'm going to hit Command G to group. So I've got a single group with those white shapes. All right, now we've got these kind of nice, kind of like delicate outline style letters, but I want to add something. I want to add depth to these, right? I want more than that. So we're going to add some nice, let's start with adding some texture. What do you think? So I'm going to go to Object, and I'm going to make another set of offset paths, going to Path, Offset Path, and I think that's fine. We're just going to stick with 19 again, 19 in again. And this time we're going to add a pattern fill to this. And if you didn't know this, in your swatches panel, we can open up this little hamburger menu here. We can navigate down to Open Swatch Library. And down here, you've got a whole bunch of built-in swatch libraries that you can choose from, different options. My personal favorite are the patterns group. Those are the ones I probably use more often than not. I'm going to go down to patterns, basic graphics. You've got dots, you've got lines, you've got textures. I want lines because we want to add some hatch lines. So I'm going to open up this basic graphics lines. And then you can see here we've got a whole bunch of different line styles that we can choose from, ones that look kind of like graph paper. And then we've got some regular lines. So I'm just going to pick one. That looks pretty good to me. And I'm going to make sure I've got my group selected here when I do that. I think this was the problem I had last time. Yeah, so it made a group inside of my group. Hold on. I'm going to redo that offset path. And I hit OK. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to hit Command X and Command F to paste in front, and then Command G to make sure I've got everything grouped. All right, and then I'm going to apply my lines. Because so what happened was it was keeping my offset path inside of the original group, and I wanted to keep those groups separate. So now I've got a separate group for my outside white fills and a separate group for my inside stripes. Now I'm going to, this looks good, but I don't want them to be stripes. I want them to read as hatch lines. So like hatch lines are like a form of like shading. So we're going for depth here, right? I'm going to go to Object, I'm going to go to Transform, and I'm going to use Rotate. And by default, our Rotate is going to have objects selected. And I don't want to do that because if you do that, obviously your whole thing is going to rotate. I only want to rotate my pattern, so I'm going to deselect Transform Objects. And when I do that, anything that I do now is only going to apply to my pattern fill. So it's a way that you can change, you can scale. You can do this with the scale any of the transforms. You can check off pattern or objects and have it only affect the patterns. I'm going to hit OK. And then we'll also add a stroke color to this. So I'm going to go to select my stroke to bring it to the front, and then we'll add a black stroke to this. And then I'm going to go up to my stroke panel and using the up arrow, just kind of match it visually to the line weight that I have for my spirals. All right, this is looking pretty good, but let's say we want to take it even further. We like the way that our hatch lines are adding some depth. We can add even more depth to this if we go to, if we add like an inset edge. So if we think about how when light hits an object, right, there's a shadowed edge on the one side of it, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add that shadowy edge, if you imagine, on one side of it to kind of push those hatch lines back in space even further. So I'm going to hit Command-C and Command-F to copy and paste in front. And I'm going to hit Command-F one more time. So I've got 2 copies of my original lines. And now dragging down, holding down Shift is going to let me constrain how I drag so that it drags at a 45-degree angle, right? So now I've got a little bit of separation between my original and my copy. Holding down Shift, I'm going to select both of these. So if I look in my Layers panel, I've got my original stripes down here. I'm leaving those alone. Then I've got my 2 copies. One's in position and one's been moved. With both of those selected, I'm going to go to my Shape Builder tool, and if you just use the Shape Builder tool regularly, it's going to join these, it's going to merge them. And I don't actually want to merge them, I want to do the opposite. So hitting Command-Z to undo, I'm going to hold down Alt or Option, and I'm just going to click, and it's going to get rid of those shapes, leaving just that inside edge. You do the same thing for all of these. If you don't want to click, you can also drag. Oh, I don't know what happened there. You can also drag, which is what I'm going to do. That's going to get rid of both of those shapes at the same time. You can see that as it's removing them, it's kind of highlighting over top of the ones that it's going to remove. All right, so now we've got our shapes there, but we actually need to remove our stripe fill because we don't want to have the duplicate stripes. And let's try it from the swatches panel. There we go. So now I've got none there, and then I'm going to switch my fill and stroke. Let's see what's happening. If this happens, I'll go to my appearance and I'll clear the appearance on these, and then I will just apply a new one. We can also try ungrouping them. I don't know what's happening. I'm going to ungroup them again and try that clear appearance one more time. There we go. Sometimes that happens if the appearance is applied to an object and it's really stuck. You can just go over to this appearance panel and hit that clear appearance after you've ungrouped them, and it should fix it. Now I'm going to group them again, click to bring my fill color to the front, and apply a black fill. So now we've got some nice depth to our letters. I am going to drag to select everything, Command-G to group, and then in the Align panel, I can make sure I've got my aligned artboard selected, and I can use a horizontal align center and a vertical align center to place them on top. You could continue to kind of build out adding additional flourishes onto these, and we could even add a background color in here really quickly if we wanted to by dragging out a shape, object, arrange, send to back. We can change this color by double clicking and kind of picking a color here. Alright, so once we're ready to upload this to Discord, we can go to export, export for screens, we can save it out. It's going to save it to our folder. We can navigate over to our Discord. I am loving all of the work you guys have been submitting. These pins are looking so cool. So be sure to check out all the work in the Discord under Data Creative Challenge DCC Feedback. That's where we're going to put our work. I'm going to drag over my folder here, and I can just drag my file right on there. It's going to place it into Discord, and I can say challenge 2. And I can just hit send, and it's going to upload the file to my Discord. Bam. And there we go. We created some fancy text, we exported it out to our Discord, and we uploaded it for everybody to see. Thank you all so much for joining me for today's Illustrator typography challenge. We went over a ton of stuff today. We went over pattern fills, the spiral tool, the type tool, the shape builder tool. Be sure to check those links right below me to find a link to our Discord and to find a link to the starter file. The mods also shared it in the chat, I'm sure, shared the link to the Discord and to our starter files. But we're live every day at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time at behance.net/Adobe Live and on the Adobe Live YouTube channel. So stay tuned for more live content after me. Bye, everyone.